Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Talent Revolution Tales from the Trenches. I'm Joe Shambach.
And I'm Jill Caniglio-Kirk.
Jill, we did it. This is 1 year anniversary. So congratulations and thank you for being on the journey with me.
It's been so much fun, Joe. And honestly, we've not even had our first fight yet. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I think it's going to be a doozy.
Fingers crossed it doesn't happen. We really appreciate the support, the comments, the likes, and our guests, which leads me to our next awesome feeling of who's joining us today. And welcome to the show, Jeff Taylor. Jeff, thank you for joining us and being on year 2 kickoff.
Year 2 kickoff in the trenches. I'm ready. How you doing?
We're fantastic. And for folks that don't know Jeff Taylor, Jeff is a true innovator in the talent recruiting space. Jeff founded monster.com. Here it is, if you don't remember. That platform revolutionized online recruiting and changed how employers and job seekers connected around the world. As a serial entrepreneur, Jeff spent decades helping shape the future of work through technology innovation. And today, he's leading his latest venture. Here it is, Boomband, where he's remaining how talent and opportunity come together in the AI era. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
You're holding up Trumposaurus. You want to just hold them up one more time? It's
of course.
It's kind of fun. So the story behind this Trump would be just fun. Is I had this concept of a big idea, a monster idea in my ad agency, and I had an agency that was called Addion that did human resource communications. And we always talked about it's a big idea. Everything else was sort of the support to get that idea done. And that monster idea concept kind of stuck and we kicked it around the office. And then I was struggling and one of my clients said, you got to figure something out. The newspaper's not working. And I had read about this bulletin board system. And I literally had a dream that we built a bulletin board that was called the Monster Board. And that story is probably pretty well known, but I got up and went to a coffee shop, I think around 5 o'clock in the morning, because I had written that idea down in the middle of the night and I was nervous I wouldn't be able to read my writing when I woke up in the morning. I have a little pad next to my bed and I drew that monster, but it was pretty bad. And then one of my designers at my ad agency, his name's Alan, he actually drew the Trumposaurus as we know it today, and it's also evolved. And I think you could probably say, there's maybe, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of those Trumpusauruses that are out in the community, and that it's one of the factors of our success. And there were characters from the 50s and 60s, but now almost every popular brand has a sort of new age character or mascot. And so that's become important to think about is you have your name and then you have your character to go along with it. So that's a side story that goes nowhere other than the fact that it was an important part of my story, and that monster was there to trumpet your success, which was about what I call now players. It was about seekers being successful. I think we've sort of lost that trusted and important guide for all of us, which is to make sure that job seekers have a really good experience. So maybe we can talk more about that.
Well, you definitely struck a chord with me there because anyone who's been on that side of it in the job seeking market, I think, can tell you right now, they really can't understand how technology has made this process so much more difficult rather than serving as an enabler. And that's certainly something that resonates with people on both sides of the conversation, whether it's the employment side or the candidate side.
I mean, I almost think you're like going to the punchline when we go to this, right? But if you look at the tech now, I just sort of describe it as like melting down, because you'd think with high supply and low demand, it would just be much easier for companies to find talent. But the reality is that we've built in a set of gates, and everyone is trying to make money in all of these gates. And the reality is that the gates have been overwhelmed, yet no one gets through the other side in one piece. And so, you can have 1,000 people apply, but the recruiter is still sitting there saying, I don't really have the quality talent that I need to do my job. And so how can that be? And from a seeker perspective, I have a friend that applied to over 900 jobs over 15 weeks. This is an incredibly motivated woman. And she's a designer, and designer jobs are under stress because of AI. And She applied for 900 jobs. 300 of those jobs, she got no response at all. 300 of those jobs got back to her and said no within, she says 6 hours, but she said there were some that were 24 hours, but some were 5 minutes later, right? So she sort of balanced it out to all within 6 hours as an average. The third group of about 300 got back to her and said, we're considering your resume. And if there isn't something here, we'll consider you for the future, which is another way to say no. Of that 917 positions she applied for, 17 she got interviews. More than half of those were some sort of bot and not a real person. And one of them she was very encouraged by and ended up with a robot style interview where it was actually a real person. And it was an avatar, not a real person. It was an avatar that interviewed her. And in that instance, she burst into tears and couldn't pull herself together. And so it sort of ended with no one winning or losing, it just ended, right? And she ended up with 2 volunteer opportunities and 1 full-time position, and she accepted, right? And so there's so much in that story about decency and what is our ethical responsibility. What's the baseline technology doing in this process? And is it actually helping? And what can we do to change it?
It's just a fundamental time and money and resources and setup and structure. It's there's not one answer to all that, Jeff. I mean, really, it's difficult, but it's what everyone's facing. So it's frustrating for everyone. I know. I
Yeah.
mean, being the recruiting side, it's like you're overwhelmed, you're looking, and you're trying to get back to all the candidates, and you're doing that with multiple different things. Again, not trying to justify the process, but it's a setup problem, and I think that's where it goes. Is organizations have to set up the structure and the communication and the plans, and be honest to the candidates applying and be respectful.
I mean, there might be a number of levels of challenge here. I think one of the levels of challenge is just this sort of, what is the human decency? What is the expectation of a person who is interested in learning more about your company and expresses that? And do we have a responsibility, even if somebody on a whim says, I'd like to learn more, do they become a customer at some level? And I think that depends on your definition of a customer, because sometimes people will say, well, it's not a ghosting situation unless I interviewed them. Like, that feels like one of the lines that gets drawn. So if someone just sends in their resume and they don't hear from us, that's not ghosting, because we didn't make any commitment on the other side, but your brand did, right? So, I'll just, a brand that people know is Nike, right? And the beautiful thing about Nike, just as an example for this, is if somebody expresses interest in working at Nike, not only are they monitoring the experience with the possibility they might be able to work for a company that they care about, but they're also literally a customer of Nike in buying their shoes, right? And so I think that that's where you go from decency to, it's almost a C-suite issue around the reputation management of this experience, right? I'm at a very big problem level here right now. If you break it down, I think that the tools are at end of life, and these tools have been around for too long. So I have a resume from 1914. It's from Harvard, and it's a person, and that person has an objective. Basically like a career summary. It has their education and that they were going through this program. It has 2 work experiences, and it has some education and hobbies at the bottom. And it looks just like a resume from someone that I just received from here in my neighborhood. It's asked for help with their career. And so you take a resume from 1914 and a resume from 2026 and put them next to each other. They really look the same. And so if you just make it more relevant to today, your AI system, whatever that system is, would like to have and metabolize a lot more information about you. And that resume, not only is it in the same format, but the term resume is French. It means summary. And AI doesn't want a summary. AI would like a lot more information about you to help do a better job with the embeddings from your information matched up against the embeddings of a job posting, which has its own set of problems, which we can talk about in a minute. So a big part of my Boomband effort is education. It's challenging a habit that's more than 100 years old. And it's the idea that your whole self is really important in this career process, in our talent management of our life, in what I call our life's work. Not just about your commercial experience, it's about your passions and your interests and your side hustles and your caregiver experience and your parenting experience and all of the experience. I'm leaving out so many important experiences.
Mhm.
And each of those has skills development that all rolls up into your life skills. And I truly believe that we will do better in what we do if we can celebrate all of those skills instead of, for example, someone who's in a job they didn't never really wanted to be in that job. They're labeled not only with that job title, but they're labeled with the skills that were associated that they learned in that job. And then you look at that person, they're a marathon runner as well as doing that job that they're stuck in. And they have grit and determination and the ability to set and achieve a goal. And they understand the fuel and the physiology of their body. And they understand how to negotiate with their partner so that they can go run 6 days a week, right? All of those skills combined with the skills of a job that maybe they're not that proud of, all could add to maybe getting a new opportunity. Let me just kind of pause and get your guys' reactions to this. I'm not saying I've got the solution at the end of the day. I just have a vision that I'm trying to explore.
From my side, it makes perfect sense because we bring our whole selves to work and we're so much more than the industry we've worked in, the achievements we've had. I think we can all look at data all over the place and say the fit piece is often why hires fail, right? And we're just not putting enough effort on who is this whole person? What's their motivation? So it certainly clicks with me. It's almost like saying, hey, we're still watching a black and white movie rather than watching this thing in color with all this technology. And we're trying to pretend like all those things don't matter when we know that they do matter. So,
Yeah, it's interesting that if you, as a hiring manager, are a runner, and your applicant is a runner and you hire that runner over two other people that were very capable for the job but not runners, I think that is a bias scenario that you could identify that's it's a human decision that was made. But if the job requires grit and determination and the ability to set and achieve goals and good negotiation skills, the reason why you hire the person and why you have an alignment is because the person you're talking to fits your role to a T. The fact that you both like running needs to be separated from the skills associated with it. So in the Boomband dossier, which we can talk more about, there is a section which is called the Power Lab, where you take all of your stories, like about marathon running, or if you like to cook, or if you collect old doll houses, whatever the thing that you do out there, which identifies a set of skills. All those skills get extracted and they get blended with your job at Nike or your job as a TA in the Power Lab. So what you see in the Power Lab is all your skills. But if you click in, you can go read the stories of how they got those skills. And I think in those stories is where we change our world, right? You know, it's a resume falls so flat in this regard that people so easily just throw keywords on a resume, especially if they can take the job posting, which I think is like the modern day cheat sheet for AI, and can align their resume to sort of mirror or be very alike to the job posting. Their resume is then aligned. And so that's jamming up the applicant tracking systems on the other side, which is making it so it's hard to identify top tier talent from the rest.
Well, everything's getting cheated in general, right? So your AI is helping you write that job description. The candidates are taking to apply their resume and tailor that to that job description that's made by AI. And then your AI system inside of whatever you're pulling in to be able to review resumes. And I think I kind of categorize it as characteristics of that person, which are characteristics of the role. And it's, I always played into the three-legged stool of attitude, aptitude, and experience, right? Can they do it? Do they have some experience? And are they willing and able? And that's where you're trying to hire for. But we're in this world of plug and play, right? And how can we do it faster and easier? And we don't want to train it. We want to just get people in and go faster,
And
right?
not only that, like, how do we keep people only in the same industry, only in the same job? How do we find people that have been in the same job 7 years that still want to come and do the same job? We're asking for things that are unnatural. People who are humans who are motivated don't want to do, right? So I think it starts there with, what are we even asking for?
So a body of research here that basically says that past performance in this way that you're describing it is not necessarily indicative of what your future performance is. And so the whole premise of having, if you have all of these skills, well, you're going to be in a different environment with a different boss, with a different goal and mission for the company. Everything's going to change. And some people are going to thrive. You have an extroverted culture or an introverted culture, or you have a technical culture, or you have more of a marketing culture. There's so many different aspects that actually are probably stronger determinants of whether someone will be successful or not. And I think that there's some pressure around tasks. I have a theory that anything that can be learned within 12 or 15 weeks as a skill, I think AI is going to do. That's going to take us from hard skills, things that you learn how to do in your job, and it's going to put some real opportunities around this idea of soft skills or character skills. I like Adam Grant's book where he talks about character skills. And the idea here is that your creativity and your ability to problem solve and your ability to be open-minded in a situation and to be able to explore different options. All of these soft skills are going to be things that are going to be critical to this next wave of employees that I think is really going to thrive. If I just go back for a second to the job posting, we have the same problem with the posting where it's not French. It doesn't mean a synthesis of the job, but it has the same problem, right? Because the square inches of the posting used to cost a lot of money. So they built a system that actually narrowed the skills to just the bare minimum. And so you'd have your requirements and what you would do in the role and the skills associated with it and the benefits. And when you put all that in, it feels tight in almost any scenario. But AI wants more depth and density around the job requirement. It wants the hiring manager intake form. It wants the conversation with a couple of the employees that do that job right now. It wants 2 old job postings that have different amounts of experience about the job so you can draw from those. And it wants a requirements document that actually is 2, 3, 4x deeper than what ends up on the classic job posting. I think that's pretty obvious, right? So the embeddings are going to be more interesting from all that information matched up with that player dossier that has a lot more information about person's life. You put those two together and matching as a service becomes extremely exciting and new as you get a lot more what I call frontier data in that mix, right? But what I'm seeing is seekers are coming into Boomband. We have a great parser. They're putting in their resume or their LinkedIn profile, and they're letting it parse, and it actually publishes it in a really nice way. And then they're done. So they're not actually taking the time to actually talk more about their passions and interests, talk about boom moments in their life, things that will contribute, projects they're working on right now. So on the player side, I have to be more compelling about the value proposition of more data. Let's go over to the TA. So let's go over to the recruiting side. I'll just pick up the old job posting. It's fine. Just use my job postings that are live on the site. And I'm like, well, what about adding more information? I don't have time. Just let's start there. And so what I have is like a new form of slop, which is all it is like human habit on both sides are incredibly unhappy with the result, but sort of blindly, but habitually just forming the same old job posting and the same old resume online, right? And so I think that there needs to be more pain. And my God, I mean, how much pain is there, right? But somehow the habits just continue on. It's just easier to basically reheat your job posting, and it's easier to just throw in your keyword resume and be done with it, right? So that's my challenge.
No,
Yeah,
it's
and I
totally
mean,
true. So for example, your dossier, I did exactly what you did, right? Put it up your resume, put your profile, and I haven't gone back to add all those extra things. It's the heavy lifting that you got to do to change that culture and to change that, because everybody's into that instant gratification, right? How can we do it faster and easier? But you're not putting in the extra effort to be able to showcase all those different things. So it's the work you've got to do that you're undertaking again in your world to change and the evolution of pushing those job seekers and hiring leaders and TA to be able to add those extra values and characteristics. So therefore it's a better match. And that's what's happening. It's not a great match, and that fit doesn't happen either, right? So and I think that's where the AI world will help us all, because we're going to add in extra data to be able to then process it and get a better fit.
Yeah. So Jill, come in with your comment. I want to add on that, but I watched you guys fight just now. It was so beautiful.
no, I was just thinking about it, thinking that people can tell their story, but how do they articulate that in a written form, right? In the right way. So
Now, can I challenge you? Like, do you really think people are good at telling their story?
I think if they're having a conversation with someone like we are right now, they are. It's like they're mentally blocked and they're thinking
Yeah.
through a different lens and they're not being their natural selves. So it's kind of this counterintuitive
Right.
ask when people
The
put on that
beauty,
job search ad.
somebody has shared just recently with me that they were in an interview and they wanted to talk about their passion, and they like to whitewater raft, and they had gone all over in whitewater rafting, right? And they ran out of time in the interview. And so the beauty of the dossier is like you can, in the sort of comfort of your home and in a relaxed state, you can go find some pictures of you whitewater rafting. You can go describe the story, the sort of euphoria, the combination of the thrill of the
Mhm.
ride and some of the problems that you have to solve along the way and the planning that it takes. And, you get the idea that, someone could do that. But in the moment in an interview, you're so concentrating on trying to figure out the one problem that you actually identified that you are able to fix on your own. And tell me about yourself. In your resume, start at the bottom and work your way up. It's like, oh my God, we can't do this on either side of the house anymore. My resume's right there. You can actually see my resume. I know you didn't read it before the interview, but it's all right there. Like, let's be more creative together. And part of that process of being more creative is actually taking some time, stepping back and saying, okay, if I want a better match here, how am I going to build that out?
Yeah. I would just say I had a recent experience for the job I'm in today where it started with some top executives saying, "We've read your resume. You've got incredible credentials. We have no qualms that you can come in here and do this job. Now we want to talk to you about our business and where we're at and how do you see things, right?" And just really kind of dig in. And I was like, how refreshing, because
Yeah.
so many places just want to quiz you on your resume.
I mean, that's so beautiful, right? Like, you could write a blog post about that. And then the only question I would have is, what interview was that in? Because that sounds like interview 4 to me.
Yeah, this was like interview 2, right?
Yeah. So you got to speak with executives in the role in interview 2, right? So if you think about it, your typical, your clearance interview is like, it's just a little better than knockout questions. Could you do this? Could you start then? Do you actually have the job you're in now? What are your top skills? Like, okay, I'll call you back. Or it's an email, and that email gets you through to the next round.
Yeah.
Then you have your interview with your TA. Then you have the interview with your hiring manager. And then at some point, if that all goes well, then you start to get into this sort of group think. And it depends on the role. And I'm obviously generalizing, but that group think actually tends to be where you're going to get you've sort of passed the rough test, which is your background actually aligns with where we want to go. Now let's talk about it and let's brainstorm in a really refreshing way, like you described.
And I would just say, I had 15 that were tell me about yourself and walk through your resume, right? And all those other things. So, yeah.
So, and I
You
think
get-
that takes a special recruiter on the side, because I've criticized my own self of, well, my interviews are pretty quick, but it's I see the background. I know what they're doing. You know,
Right.
give me some little particulars. What do you really want to do? Where do you want to go? And because I'm trying to assess, you know, yes, do you have the right piece, but are you the right fit? But I'm a little different, you know, and I guess everyone can say that themselves, but you know, it's understanding where they've been, what they do. But I'm not that drop down, drag out of give me every role. Why did you leave? What's going on? You can see all that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And you
yeah.
can tell that, but it's what's their story, what's going on, where do they want to go? At least that's how I do it to be able to pass on. But I think you guys are dead on. The hiring leaders and then the other roles is really, you know, they don't get into the person as much. And I guess I throw out the question, and maybe more to both of you, is that a concern on the, let's call it the equity and intrusive side of things? You know, is that going to get into problems of asking about their personal background and personal aspects of it?
So there's a lot baked in there. I think what you're saying is when you get to the level of the interview where it starts to explore actual real fit, are you in danger of starting to create some of the legal blockers? You know, let's talk about bias, or are from a diversity perspective, are you going to start to ask the wrong question or whatever? And I think most of the problem in what we've been talking about for the last 15 minutes happens long before this, right? We could do a whole session on the you do in that scenario when you're truly exploring fit. I've done a poll where I said, okay, is bias caused by a human or caused by the machine? And generally speaking, it's about 2/3 human, 1/3 machine. And the reality is that a human made the machine. And so I think that you could probably get to 100% of bias really comes from humans, just a question of whether it's built into the technology. But I think that there's these problems very in top of funnel, way before you get to the beauty of what Jill, you were just describing, which is where, okay, in your ATS, you've got some calibration for whatever 50% is or whatever, which has some knockout stuff in it. And that was set by an engineer team that was deploying the applicant tracking system. And I'm sure I'm going to ruffle some feathers here, but there's some stuff that's preset in the machine that actually washes people out, right? And then you have your typical questions that come along with your resume that get answered, and that knocks out another component of the percentage. And then a lot of times you'll have a system that will score people based on, let's talk about it as embeddings. You are asking for Python. Do they have Python? You're asking for Supabase as a developer. Do they have Supabase experience, right? So by the time you get to the beauty of these interviews that we're talking about here, you're already at 3 to 1% of the people that go through the process. 90% have been pushed away from the process to either for other future roles or not for our company. I think that's the place where we're challenged right now, right? Where I think we can do better. And as we get to that point, Joe, you mentioned something about AI earlier, and you said as AI gets better. So AI, there's so many different levels of AI. It's hard to like generalize about it, but let's say that you're using AI to apply for jobs while you sleep. Which is one of the areas that I think is creating both opportunity and challenges, right? That allows you to apply for 100 jobs or 200 jobs or 300 jobs a day. Well, you've lost complete control as a job seeker player at that moment, right? Because you're now having your cover letter built and your resume built for jobs that you didn't even know existed that you're now applying for. You're sitting in all these applicant tracking systems with that motion happening. And I think that that is given early AI sort of a bad rap, that they're starting to try to identify tells. You know, when AI first came out and you were like, oh, that person has 6 fingers or that person's ear is funny. You would do all these sort of like, I know that's AI because of the M dash. And then what happened is the designers of those systems actually just fix those things. So some of the identification marks that we were looking for 3 months ago, they're not there anymore. It just keeps getting better and better. And I had somebody a comment on one of my posts on LinkedIn, and they said, well, I don't know whether this is a robot or not, but I guess I'll answer it anyway. It's probably AI. And I said, no, it's Jeff. You know, it's really me. But I'm there like pinching myself as I type it. Like, like there's still no way to tell, even though I say it's Jeff, right? And so uh, somebody said like about half of the traffic now generated every day is through AI and through bot traffic. It's not actually humans, and so that means that we're all encountering things that we think are more um, genuine, authentic experiences that probably are meant to market to us and meant to kind of play on our emotion. I think it's going to get more dynamic because you basically now have this idea of like self-service agents where agents are talking to agents. And I see Workday and SAP and Salesforce all deploying these kind of multi-agent workflows, right? And so now you have like agent to agent, or you have agent to UI, or you have these these model context protocols. All of this is basically to say that we're going to lose more control at the same time where we're quite skeptical about where the data come from. How are you processing that data? Do I know who I'm talking to is a real person? And I think it's going to get very exciting and really challenging over the next year as we continue to progress. What do you guys think?
Well, isn't there a site that the bots can talk to each other that
Yes.
can help each other? I can't remember what it's called, but
Yeah.
that's
And
already
it
happened.
it got bought, right? Like right away. And I think at least 2/3 of those bots were actually humans kind of seeding, trying to be bots in that. I'm not an expert at that, so I really don't know. But this idea that that this is going to continue to progress, I think is very exciting and also incredibly scary. The commencement speeches over the last few weeks, where there were boos in the audience around AI, that's an emotional reaction and an emotional safety net of those around you when everyone is booing. It's like, okay, is that progress or is that not progress? And I, from my view, that we're already there. This is already happening. And so you can expect that you cannot stop this. So I think we have to really start learning. I'd like to get both of your thoughts on where are you each with AI and an honest assessment, and also what do you think about the boos in the audience? Are we booing on LinkedIn when I write a post on AI and it's like crickets? It feels like people are voting with their lack of comment, that it's just too much right now.
Yeah, it's complicated, right? There's nothing easy about this,
Yeah.
but it's not going anywhere. So
Mhm.
I'm a believer that this is a great aid for me. I keep continuing my use and encouraging my team's use so that we can create more space for human interaction and take a
Mhm.
lot of the automation and task related work away from us in HR so we can do the important work we love doing. So for me, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And I'm trying to embrace it, saying if I can take away things I don't enjoy doing and make those easier and invest in that, what's bad about that? So
Mm.
that's just where I'm at.
So there's two quotes that I've sort of leaned into. One is that AI is not going to take your job, but someone that knows AI will. I think that was coined, I think, in the fall of 2024 and was well talked about in 2025. And then there was a McKinsey study that came out in Q1 of 2025 that said by 2030 that we're going to be like 30% more productive. And the sort of theme of that article was that we should be able to hand off tasks that are the less human tasks, the things that grew up in our jobs that we had to do that maybe aren't natural kind of capable things for us to do in our soft skills as humans. I think the challenge, and I want to push you a little bit, Bill, here in terms of where your learning curve is and mine, is that once you can be 30% more efficient, which means 30% of the tasks are being done, then what's to stop it from going to 40%? Like, I think that's one aspect of it. And if your whole company is 30% more productive. Does that mean that every human gets 30% more time to do the things they enjoy as a human? Or does that actually mean that there's an efficiency play at the C-suite level and that the company gets smaller? And that's what we're seeing in some of the marquee companies right now. And I think the middle markets are in the process of following suit, because even 5 years ago, if you had layoffs, there was a perception value against your stock or against your reputation if you laid off. Whereas all of a sudden now in the marketplace, you're seeing a reward for being smart about being more efficient with staff. I think there's certain examples that are quite awkward, like Mark Zuckerberg pulling in with 350-foot yacht into West Coast towns where he's laid off, 5,000 engineers, right? Like these are these boo moments right now that we're seeing, but I think we're going to keep seeing that efficiency play. Those two quotes are anchored in this idea that I don't think we can now relax with the idea that we can enjoy the fruits of this effort. I think the disruption is much stronger than that. And it's part of why people don't like talking about it right now, because right underneath the booze is anxiety about whether those graduates are going to get jobs, and why 51% of the working population would be open to another opportunity is because they know they got to have their sight line, their eyes up right now, because of just changes come out of nowhere. Jack Dorsey and Block said an interesting example where you're laying off 40% of 10,000, 4,000, keeping 6,000 employees, all in one fell swoop, talking about efficiency and talking about AI. You have some examples where there's really good things happening, where companies are reskilling, retraining, and sort of resetting larger groups of people. IKEA just had an example like that where they retrained about 16 or 1,800 people. I like stories like this, and I'd like to do more with these stories. I just I haven't found enough of them yet to actually feel like it's a trend versus goodwill. It's sort of like Patagonia, when they had that fire and they kept all their employees. These are iconic stories about companies that are known to care about their employees. We have to get it so it's in the mainstream that there's actual reskilling.
To me, that whole journey starts with, why do I hire people? What value are they going to create? And I know in my company, the conversations are about, if we could use AI to free up these individuals to like quote models, right? Quote models for components, et cetera. And all of that could be automated. How much time could those people spend with our customers? How much could we really think about re-engineering, taking cost out, right? So how do we shift, our time from something like that so that we can do something more meaningful that does drive revenue, that does, right? We get ROI, because when you think about quote models, we're only going to win a certain percentage of that business. The rest of that time is lost. So if we could take all of that time and put it toward business we do have with customers we do have, we know there's ROI in that.
Right. One of the things I was saying is that 2025 was sort of a reprieve where many companies were doing experiments with AI. They were doing prototypes, and they were trying in different departments to see what aspects of AI would stick in their efficiency. And a lot of that failed, right? And I think most of that is maybe trying to do too much too soon, not putting the right people on the projects, but just putting it out there and having people do it. I think a lot of what we're seeing working is when you have this organic AI work being done inside companies, where the engineers, for example, my own engineers, are spending about 90 to 95% of their coding is now being done with Claude or with Cursive, or they use something called Warp and a couple of others, where I had to press them to get them to tell me how much code was being developed with this work, right? And so I think the thing it's done for me is allow me to hire less engineers to get the same productivity, right? So in your case, where you have stuff that was identified as part of that job, and if they're not going to do that part of the job, I think the natural place that will go is like the Shopify CEO when he said, look, we need to check and see if AI could do that job before I'll approve that rec. I think we saw that a lot in 2025 where there was just a slowness in new hires. And I think that impacts a lot of entry level workers because maybe not with good foresight, but the reality is that not hiring your entry level workers is just such an easy way when you can't assess your total working population for skills is just to say slow your entry level hiring or slow new hiring.
The other thing you hit on earlier was soft skills being more important. I feel like young grads coming out and this whole world they've lived in with technology and maybe being a little bit less face to face, certain other aspects of how they've formed their college years,
Sure.
early years, right? COVID, retreating, everything online has really become something that is a hindrance to them entering the workforce and competing for roles
Oh, yeah.
and growing and learning, right? So I've seen that in a big way where people are far behind where many of us were in their career because of all of those things.
Yeah, it's funny. College has to reinvent itself, I think, and I think that college has been very skill oriented, and I don't think it will stop, but it's been very organized around 26 majors and a
Mhm.
curriculum that has 100 level, 200, 300 level, and I think I think college is going to be about how do you make friends naturally, how do you build your soft skill base, which has been sort of dormant in your junior high and high school years. I have so many thoughts here.
Yeah.
My friend is an eighth grade teacher, and one of the things she shared was that there is this attention deficit that is comes from everything needs to be in these short, like 3 minute, 2 minute snippets. And I have 12 and 15-year-old kids, and I watch them watch YouTube videos. Your average time watching on a video is probably like 6 seconds, 9 seconds. It's so fast, right? And you go into a club today and everything is mashups and every song is lasts 35 seconds, and they're just slamming and slamming and slamming because they're trying to keep the dopamine higher than it would normally be. And I'm not sure it's just dopamine, but I think it's a trained it's a human experiment that's going probably badly with I don't know. I'm getting into territory that I don't know enough about, but what the iPhone is like this amazing tool which has these second and third order consequences. And I think what you're describing, entry level workers coming out that don't have the same skill set. Let me balance it with my 15-year-old. I was out at Barrett Jackson out in Scottsdale, and I took him with me. And there was a drone single man helicopter that was there, and they had a simulator. And you had to be, I don't know, 16 or 17 to go in this thing, but he's 15. And I convinced him to have my son go in it. And he does a lot with Oculus or whatever. And he's very experienced gamer. And he put on the Oculus headset that was flying this helicopter. And in about a minute, he did the thing that they were usually having an adult take about 20 minutes to do, which was go land on this building. And then within about 5 minutes, he was flying the helicopter sideways in the streets of this town. And the owner and the three salespeople were all watching my son fly this helicopter virtually. And so back to our reality here is that the younger generation has these amazing skill sets to balance out with some of the challenges that you're describing. So how do we build a world for them? And I don't know the answer, but I know that we need to set that world up for their success. And that the idea of not having that generation working is a death knell for companies. I firmly believe that there has to be a pipeline. And if you cut the pipeline off, yeah, that's the beginning of the death of your company. And maybe that's too strong, but the strength of a company, I think, is in multi-generation. It's in male and females working together. It's in the dynamics of the diversity. And if we mess that up, we're going to be messing up more than just one company.
Agreed.
I think is personal opinion on it, but the quote that you gave is totally true, and I think it's AI. If people are writing it off, they're done, right? I mean, you have to adopt it, you have to go with it and grow with it. and it's going to make everybody more efficient. And I think the other side of it is we're going to get more efficient. So you talk about 30% efficiency, then you get to actually do more stuff that you really wanted to do, right? We all talk about this laundry list of activities inside of companies, and we never get to do them. When we get AI going, we're going to be efficient. We can get to those things.
Yeah, I'll paint just a slightly different picture. I listened to a podcast called Lenny. I'd highly recommend it. He interviews heads of product and CEOs of some of the really exciting new growth companies in the AI space. And I've learned a lot from listening to him. And one of the quotes that I took from that show is that you can kind of like brush off the hype cycle, but you can't ignore the mega trend. And I think we're in this awkward, just get rid of that AI crap. Enough about talking about that right now. Boo. Right. And we're in the sort of exhaust of the hype cycle right now as the actual reality hits. You have a group of TAs. I was on a call, it was probably 6 or 8 months ago now. And the consensus of the group is I feel bad for photographers. I feel bad for designers, copywriters, customer service reps. Oh, it's like the world is going to be so tough for them, but we'll be fine. And I actually think that is not the right way to look at this at all. We will be changed is, I think, the thing you have to say, that we're going to get changed. And I'm not sure that that's proper English, but the changing process, I think, is that if you can lean into the megatrend, and then you're the one that takes the Claude coding course and actually learns and applies it and builds a little website and starts to have that experience. And then you're the one who's actually sharing how you're using AI in your department or how you've built your own model. And you start to be in conversations where you're the one that's answering the questions and others are asking you. My opinion is you need to be on that side of the line, because if you're on the other side of the line, you're like I would have experienced in the 80s or early 90s, where, I really don't need to have a laptop. I really don't need to use this. I'll be able to retire before this actually matters. I mean, it seems so silly now that somebody would say that. And I think the same thing is true with AI. I also think that I'm not being positive enough because I'm emphasizing the change management of this process. But this idea of the Jevons effect, which is this idea that technology progress sort of increases efficiency, which then in turn, the overall consumption goes up, is a thing that people are leaning on, which is the idea that there's going to be more jobs created around AI. And I think that's good, but let's check for a second, right? So you've got a situation where those jobs we described are already being mostly managed using AI. So there's a lot less customer service reps, let's say, or there's less designers or less copywriters. You still need them. You still need good ones, right? But it kind of clears out people maybe that aren't as talented. But if you think about now, the lawyers are experiencing what's happening. And now the architects are experiencing something that's happening. And then you now look, the programmers have been experiencing something happening, and they're starting to reinvent themselves. Each area, I think, is the tasks are going to gobble up, and they're not going to care what your job title is. In fact, job titles might change. I see that the efficiency, which is creating a lot of the negative headlines, actually does give way to the efficiency, which gives you the resources. And the other thing, I'm pretty hyped up about this, I think you can see, but in the next 2 quarters, 5 or 6 companies are going to each raise around $1 trillion. Just that act alone is going to change the startup ecosystem. It's going to change the entire infrastructure. It's going to reinvent manufacturing. It's going to reinvent power. And compute in general is just going to, I think this next 5 years is going to be incredibly exciting if you can kind of hang on. It's sort of like, I don't know, I did a post about 6 or 8 months ago. One person is hanging on a rope and just loving swinging on a rope, and the other person is hanging on a rope for dear life. And it's like, which way are you going to hang as this whole thing progresses, right? Because this is going to be the change of our lifetime. And I think we sort of thought that the internet was the change of our lifetime, but the internet was really about distribution of information. This is about actual real reinvention and changing the productivity of our world. And So, you know what? I'm in this beautiful vantage point where I could just, I don't know, I could fuck it up so badly. An opportunity to kind of reinvent talent and think about talent in this new world. And I know I've got good bones for it, right? I have good life experience. I have the right mindset, I think. And the idea of creative invention, I think, is very much what Boomband is about. And I haven't figured it all out yet. I'm very open about that. I'm a startup. You know, I have 14 employees, right? Like this is where I am now.
With that, we would, kind of closing into awesome discussion, navigating today's talent market. And I would think our listeners would love to hear your perspective. What advice, what suggestions, how do you stand out? Where could they go from a job seeker? What advice on a job seeker, hiring leaders, HR, talent acquisition, from your perspective, what advice and how would you guide them to navigating today's talent market?
I think you just asked about every job. So let's
I did.
let's talk about the seeker perspective. The problem with quiet staying is it inherently means you're trying to hide in a full-time job that's paying you well. I would try to erase that concept. I think you want to be a person who's providing solutions in your organizations right now. The idea of quiet staying in your company is a very bad idea right now. And it is the trend, right? It's don't look for jobs, stay where you are. And what I would say is if you have a job, covet it, but that doesn't mean take it for granted. It doesn't mean you're golfing 3 days a week trying to act like you're working. I think this is the time when we have to lean into our jobs. There's some things I would talk about with an entry-level worker coming in. I think getting a job of any kind right now is the most important thing. Do a side hustle and see if you could turn that into a job. Take a part-time job as a bartender, but make it your business to talk to every person at your bar. If you like fixing bicycles, start offering to fix bicycles as well as doing that part-time job, right? Any of these kinds of things are this idea of you got to be in it to win it. The only way you're going to kind of work this out is if you push right now. I think the other thing is let salary be second. There's this idea of I don't have to work hard, I'll just work smart. That's sort of like your college graduate from the last 15 years, right? And the reality is that the ones that work hard are the ones that are being successful. And so a lot of that comes down to like, don't worry about the salary right now. Take the job. And you don't even have to be the one that falls on your sword where there's a lot of awkwardness around you taking that. Just say, look, I'll take the job. I know what my value is and I will show you that. I just like the ability to be able to have a conversation in an ongoing way without feeling like I'm being selfish because I'm going to take considerably less than where at least I thought I was going to be. I think that there are a couple other things that solve a problem in your life, solve a problem that you see, solve a problem in your job. And in that process, try to use new technology as part of solving that problem and collaborate with others to solve the problem. And if, I always talk about, the bigger problem you can pick to solve, the more attention you're going to garner as you actually accomplish that goal. I learned something at HBS. It was like, go after the fat rabbit was one of the marketing professors' things. And I always said, go after the skinniest, wiriest rabbit you can find, because when you catch that rabbit, everyone will be like, holy shit, he caught the rabbit, right? Yeah, good. So don't take the easy way right now. Take the hard way and try to learn all the way along the way. So that's my advice, is that this is the scrappiest moment where someone who hacks a job together, you call it a cash stack, right? Where you're putting different ways that you're making money all together and making a paycheck out of that is a beautiful way to be right now when you can't get a traditional full-time job, which was in your mindset what you thought was going to happen. Okay, if I go to the TA, I'm worried. Let me get this right. Pig in a python. You've got a person who needs a job on one side, and you've got a hiring manager on the other side that wants to hire the person. And in the middle, everything is just stuck, right? And so I think as a TA, part of our job, I've been a recruiter. I've also hired thousands of people. People always say, "Oh, Jeff's just like some sort of like job board guy." Right. I've done all the different aspects of this. And I think for the TA, trying to figure out where the bottleneck is and try to unpack the bottleneck and try to improve it. And I think some of the clues from our earlier conversation, like if you just started answering applicants and saying, thank you for applying. I just really appreciate that you thought that our company was right. And this job is not right for you, right? But I'd love to build a relationship with you. It's like, okay, I can hear them now, like the high volume positions. Like, Jeff, what are you talking about? I have to hire 100 people a week. I can't do what you're describing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying try to figure out how to unstick the bottleneck. And in the process of doing that, you will protect your job and you'll actually have ROI that you can talk about when you go for your negotiations. And I think there's a worry that as the tasks get eaten, that the TA job is a lot of tasks. And so, like, identify the parts of the job which nobody else can do. Jill, you talked about this, the things that we really do, the conversations that we're having, have the conversations, because a lot of people still are hiding behind all the systems, not having the conversation. So reinvent the concept of being a recruiter as being a scout, to be scouting for talent, not just receiving the pile, because the pile is overwhelming and going to exhaust you trying to go through it. Being a means identifying the talent that you're going after.
I think that inbox to outbox mentality is killing so many functions. I know it's killing HR teams. It's killing TA people. Have conversations. Start there. Put the same people in a room and pick a lane. And if it doesn't work, say, okay, we tried that. That didn't work. Let's try something else. But I think a lot of people are hiding behind their email boxes and their finger pointing. So
one of the things I love is, okay, challenge the hiring manager. Get the hiring managers more involved, and they're basically barely giving us the time of day in the TA function, right? And so they're like, yeah, just you know what to do, right? And you're like, no, I don't know what to do. I need more information. I need to talk to the couple people that this person can be working for. What's different? This job description doesn't say anything. Let's talk about the role. What is it that you actually want? That's a scary conversation. And in a lot of organizations, look, I don't have time for you. It's like, then at some point you have to have that brave conversation, right? If you don't have time for me, then how am I going to actually do a good job for you, right? And
if they don't have time, this is what I do. I go talk to the person doing the job and said, do you know that your most successful guy told me this isn't at all what he does? Isn't that interesting? Right?
Right. Now, as we're throwing out little pieces of advice here, be careful, right? Because that could be perceived as sort of undermining the manager, right? You know, and so finding
called out a couple times.
I'm not. All I'm saying is there needs to be a little caveat. Like, you want to be strategic about this, because you also don't want to undermine the importance of what you're trying to do with trying to break too much glass, I guess is so I'm saying break the glass, but just think about what you're doing, because it'll have second order consequences. And what you hope is that you get more relationship building with your hiring managers, which then means that's job security, by the way, right? You know, it's like any of these things where you're taking a risk are things that are stepping up your ability to keep your job. And so this is that thing about don't quite stay in TA right now. It's not a good idea, right? So,
yeah. And to all the TA and HR people out there, season 1 is just packed with breaking down bottlenecks and all the things we talked about today. So we cover a lot of those things in our season 1. So
yeah. Joe, did I answer your question? Like, it was such a good question, but it's sort of like a 5-minute question that had, at least it had seeker view and had TA view. There could be another one in there somewhere.
You nuggeted it in there with the hiring leaders in the HR. No, but I mean, it's you gave some great advice on navigating and what to do and what not to do.
What do you think about ageism?
Oh, that's a whole hour conversation right there. But I would just say, There's no denying it right now in the market. I mean, you can talk to anybody in job search. I read a post yesterday, a person in their 50s was saying, I was being asked, when are you wanting to retire? And he's like, I'm in the prime of my life. It's just everywhere. And I would just say it's real. It's real.
It's real, and the job seekers really feel it, at least the folks that I've spoken to. And I'm like, well, you have great experience. I'm moving you forward. Like, I'm not worried about that. You can do the job. Let's go. Right. But it's built into some of I hate saying AI, but I think it's in there. And I think there's some bias. I really hope that the recruiters are looking at, how do I find the right person, not looking at how much, can they do the work, and can they do the work for the next couple of years? And that's where they're at. That's what they want, regardless of the age. I hope, but it happens. And it's a real thing out there for sure.
Yeah,
What do you
I
think?
think, well, so I'm 65. And so one of the things I've enjoyed is being the young, successful, kind of entrepreneur. And now I'm old. And but the thing is that I don't feel old, and I would never accept the idea of the label. I'll run circles around you, right? I read a post about bias. It said, you're, as a person in their 50s, you go into a party and basically no one talks to you, and you just sort of go in the corner with the one person and there just isn't any dynamic. The point was that people don't want to talk to older people. And I was like, okay, like there's a circle of people, and we're all talking about the hot things that are happening right now. People can't get into the circle fast enough, right? It has a lot to do with what is your internal narrative, and then how do you carry yourself in that narrative, right? And so yes, there's a reality that when I'm raising money, that the person I'm competing with might be a 29-year-old, kind of AI entrepreneur. I think I just read that only 0.7%, less than 1% of the venture capital money in New England actually goes to women. And so I'm competing against somebody who is younger than my older set of kids. And I have to work on that. That's, I don't know. I like the 8 Mile Eminem movie. If you've seen that, and in the end, he basically says, "Yes, I am from a trailer park, and yes, I do this." And I kind of feel like, as a older entrepreneur, you have to be better, right? And I think the advice I've been giving out in this, sort of with energy, is that you've got to be on your game. You have to be learning. You have to be breaking glass. And you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And I think the people that are doing that are not in the conversation about bias of the older people. I think they have challenges with it, but they're just not in that conversation, that the different narrative that they're part of and fighting. I don't know the answer to this, but the thing is, I do know that you have to prove you're younger than me. Like, and I work out, and I take care of myself, and I want to be in the game. And a number of my friends that are my age, they are not in the game anymore. They are in a different place, right? So I think, again, these are choices you make. If you're thinking about retirement when you're in your 50s, then what you said was that someone asked the question about retirement, I think, right? It wasn't that person was thinking about retirement. But for every person like that, there's somebody else thinking, I just want to hang on for another, 4 or 5 years. I'll make it to 60 or whatever. I hear comments sort of regularly, well, by the time I'm in my 50s, I don't know, things will be different or whatever. And it's like, okay, that came and went, we all have this interesting perspective.
Yeah, and to me, I think age is a number. You bring a certain energy and enthusiasm to any circle you're in. And I think it's real, but I also feel like you said, you have to break glass. You have to kind of play the dragon in the room, right? And, the truth is, at the end of the day, you've learned a lot in the school of hard knocks, right? That the 29-year-old entrepreneur has not. And the truth is, there's something to be said about that. So
yeah, and honestly, the proof's in the pudding. I've got to make revenue. I've got to make my numbers. I've got to get to a certain valuation. Kind of in my business. So, I'll just sort of tie it back to the idea of building a dossier is that it's meant to reward experiences and stories. And the deep and dense stories that you can share about your experiences actually build up your power lab. And so one of the beauties of the dossier is that it rewards experience. And then the experience gets separated from the stories. And when you're in the arena, I don't know if you got that far, Joe, but everyone's just initials, right? And so at least your first fight, which is getting noticed, is much more about the experiences created and how you tell the stories. And so, Joe, I got to get you to go in and tell those stories, right? Because it's the people that actually invest the time that actually are the ones that are performing in the arena, right? And so, I just maybe if I put a little plug, I have this dream of us actually being able to be valued against our whole selves, and a big part of that value doesn't have anything to do. It has to do with
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so many possibilities. And I'm excited about, we need to do something differently. The world's changing. We can't keep doing things the way they were done. Was it 1914?
yeah.
We can't keep doing that.
Yeah. You know, what's funny is the job posting's been around since the 1700s. You know, they used to put
Help
put
woman,
an
right?
announcement on a tree, about a blacksmith apprentice, a position. Those are the first postings. I think there's actually Da Vinci resume that is him describing his experiences that is maybe credited as the first resume from the Da Vinci era. But the idea that our tools are aging out and how we reinvent ourselves. I think the idea that you make an announcement for a job and put it out into the world and say just apply, I think that's going to go away. Right? It just doesn't make any sense. The data is so good and getting better that you would identify, here's the neighborhood I want to be in. At least I'm talking to a neighborhood instead of the whole country. And then once I'm in a neighborhood, what I mean by that is you put all the software engineers together that have Python and Rust, and you've got a neighborhood right here. And then if you start seeing what's the tiebreaker in here, and it's the embeddings of your experiences, then all of a sudden it actually boosts you more signal versus less signal coming from more matches on the embeddings of the job. That's the new world. We're not in Boolean search anymore. We're not in keyword search anymore. We're actually into this concept. And so I think being able to express the neighborhoods you're a part of, if you're a big kayaker and you want to meet other kayakers, you can do that in our arena. You just X out all the kind of commercial skills and put in kayaking, and you can meet other people that have kayaking in their interest. I'd sort of say, like, come for the tools, but stay for the network. I think through
Just
time,
gonna say it takes
this
that's a
idea of people meeting other people. My chief growth officer, Chip, is a country music writer, and he said he would love to meet the other country music writers in the Boston area. And there's probably two of them, right? But maybe you can find them on Boomband, right? I had a CHRO pull me aside and say, could I use your arena for dating? And I was like, yeah. If you know what you want, you know what you're looking for, this could be an excellent way to take the embeddings of what you're looking for and to find people in the arena. So I see a lot of opportunities. I don't have enough scale yet. We just crossed 1,000 people that have built their dossiers, and we have 32 or 33 companies in the Boston area, and we're mostly in New England right now. We have remote jobs across the country, and we're going to open New York and New Jersey at the end of the summer, and we'll open the whole United States kind of target by the end of the year or Q1 of
We're going
2027.
to hope that launching this 1 year anniversary episode gets you to 1,500.
Yeah.
And we'll see what we could do for you.
Yeah. Is this helpful? I'm sure we did not follow the script at all of what you were hoping for.
This was amazing. It's an awesome conversation and organic, going in every direction, Jeff. This was fantastic. And I think everyone's going to love and enjoy the conversation. Just variety of perspectives and ideas and where everyone feels the world's going and need for a change.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you for not staying with the status quo. Thank you for caring enough about the world to flip it on its head. I'm super excited about Boomband, and we've got to do things differently to get different outcomes. So I appreciate what you're doing and the energy you're bringing toward it.
Yeah, it's funny when we just sort of off camera before we started, we were talking about just an appreciation for being together, and I think what you're doing is trying to communicate out to our community the important topics. And as you go into year two, I think some of the things that we've been touching on, I think, are all going to be sort of hot issues. And one of the things we've been talking about is how many credits you're using with your AI. And I was predicting that was going to be a big conversation over the next couple quarters. And I think you're going to see that the traditional job matching tools are going to be at end of life. The traditional sort of ATS is going to be nearing more end of life. And you're going to see a whole reinvention of the tools that we're using. And it's going to be a really cool time to be telling the stories about, kind of what's happening around you. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed our 1-year anniversary episode. And I think this one's going to be hard to top, but we're going to try next time. Thanks again, Jeff. Take care.
Cheers. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye.